Good morning. Hello. This is a live stream for section 2 of the electronic literature class at the University of Mary Washington, and I am Zach Whalen. Zach Whalen. So today we are talking about interactive fiction and moving towards the end of our conversation about interactive fiction, but taking a look at some contemporary works, or relatively contemporary. Some of these are a couple years old, but newer than some of the things we've been looking at the last couple weeks. So I want to orient you all, students in the class, with a couple of things in terms of the schedule. So here we are. This is week 11. So this is an odd week. So those of you who are in the odd cohorts, I will expect to see you in person on Wednesday, HCC 329. If you're in the in-person cohort, for the in-person odd cohort, you know what I mean. And on that day, we will spend some time reviewing for the quiz, which will be the same kind of thing we've been doing. It'll be open book, open everything, unlocked after class, and then available until Friday. So take a look at that and be prepared for that. Of course, you want to review the Google Docs and make sure that there are things in the Google Doc about, especially the things that I've assigned for today, like with Those We Love Alive by Porpentine and Babyface by Mark Sample. Make sure you're familiar with those works, and then you can answer some questions about them and probably identify some quotes from them. That's the kind of thing that I will make sure to add in the quiz. This quiz will be somewhat narrower than the last one, and more like the first quiz in terms of what it covers. So be prepared for that. Multiple choice mostly. On Wednesday, we'll spend a little bit of time thinking of sample essay questions to add for the quiz. So that seems to be going pretty well. Speaking of quizzes, I still haven't graded the last one, so the essay questions for that one. I will. I don't know for sure if I can get that done by Friday. The other big thing that I haven't graded, of course, is the creative projects. So between those two, I probably won't be able to do both. I might try to make a dent in both, but I don't know if I can finish. I don't think I can finish both of them this week. But I'll try. I know I have a backlog on the homework grading. That's pretty quick though, so that one's not as much of a concern, and you're probably not as worried about that. But I'm just letting you know that I'm working on these things. I had a big chunk of things I needed to get done for my other class, so I got those done, and I'm kind of coming back here to look at these things. Of course, just kind of going back in time, looking at the schedule, a couple things that you should, of course, make sure to have some notes on is Bandersnatch from last week, and then also the essay by Marie-Laure Ryan, which we talked about on Friday in Zoom, Toward an Interactive Narratology. And the main thing that I want you to think about from that essay, it's a chapter from her book, but we got some ideas about narratology, and also we got a vocabulary for a typology for discussing different kinds of interactivity, and that's something that we can see in the works that I'll talk about today, and everything, right? Everything that we think of as being interactive, we could try to put into her map of different types of interactivity, and have a discussion about what belongs where, and then what when we recognize good design, or we experience good design from something like this, that terminology might help us explain why it's working. So, for example, many of the works that we're talking about really, I think, have internal ontological interactivity, meaning we are situated in a world somehow, and we do things that make sense to us, that they matter, or let me back a bit. We do things that matter to the world. And often whenever we recognize that as good, it is also when we understand the choices we're making. Like, we understand the choices we're making, and then we see the outcome of them, and the outcome is reasonable, or it fits into a new understanding of the world. I think those are the things that I think lend themselves to being recognized as good design, using, again, her terminology. Remember I have my notes here for that, but I don't know if you can see it, but the grid, the matrix of different configurations of internal, external, exploratory, ontological. Those are the two oppositions that are capable of being graphed. Okay, so that's where we are for now. I wanted to mention a couple other things here. So the other homework for Wednesday, by the way, is to finish the rest of chapter 4, and it is in Perusall, but it's in kind of an unusual place. So let me just show it to you. Oh, well, I guess I have to reload. I have to get back into Perusall here. Let me go from here, maybe. Can I not do that? Really? It's not going to let me go back? Cool, thanks. Perusall. So let me go all the way back into Perusall from here to show you how to find and what to read. It's the second part of the chapter, but it's not as long as the first part. So I made this, I call this optional. So it's an option, but I put it here as an assignment so it's easy to find. Because otherwise, it's kind of weird, like the way that Perusall works. Or not weird, but it's kind of hard to follow unless you're looking for it. Everything that I've uploaded is here in the library, but assignments it kind of drops you into this page here, which is assignments. And what's interesting is if you click on interactive fiction and game-like forms, which is the title of the chapter, this is the assignment that was due like last week. When I open this, or when you open this, what you'll see is not the entire chapter, just the part that I assigned. So it looks like the chapter ends on this section, modeling ethical choice and moral complicity. Which it does not. There's a bit more after that. It's just that the assignment only included up to that part, and so the assignment just presents that part of the content to you when you access it through that assignment link. The other way to get to it is to go to the course home and then library, and then here's the whole thing. You could look at it this way, but just to make it easier to find, I also made an assignment of just the rest of chapter 4. So if you take a look at this, it's marked as an optional assignment, but it's the same content. It's just, but it keeps going. So it actually starts with the that section, or like, yeah. Well, actually, no, it doesn't even include the previous one. That's awkward, man. Okay. Well, you can find it hopefully, but this is the continuation of that thing about ethical choice and moral complicity. And then the major part that's interesting and important here is this bit here: hypertext plus interactive fiction equals Twine. And Twine is the platform that you see that you used to experience Babyface, and With Those We Love Alive, and also you may have used it to create your creative project. It's a very popular platform. So that's a bit about Twine, some of the background, and some discussion of some key works, including With Those We Love Alive. And then there's a bit about games as literary platforms, and then games as digital vernacular. So these are more broadly things like games. And what I wanted to do today, by the way, is spend a little time showing you some of these games that are mentioned here. Some of these are I have them on this computer, some of them I don't, so I can't show them, but or they're not good to demo because they're too complicated to explain. Portal 2 came out in 2011? Man. I feel like I still kind of think of Portal 2 as like the new one. But yikes, that's almost 10 years old. Okay, so cool. I guess time passes, doesn't it? So anyway, yeah, I want to show you some examples. Some of these are more new than that. But let's take a look at the schedule again. If you have any questions about things you can't find it, let me know. But I do want you to I do want to make sure to convey to you that you need to make sure you've read all the way through the end of chapter 4, so you have those examples, because they will likely show up on the quiz. And we'll talk about them as we can in class on Wednesday, but just even if we don't get to talk about it, it's there. Yeah, Bobby, I don't think that's just your opinion. So Bobby in the chat saying Babyface was creepy in my opinion. Yeah, I don't think you're alone in that. I don't think that's a unique take. And we'll talk about it here in a bit. All right, so let's take a look at some things. Like I said, I want to talk. So you've played Babyface, you've played With Those We Love Alive. There are some things that I wanted to show you in them. I might want to, yeah, that's it. Okay, I'm glad you feel that way too, Zoe, because it feels like 2010 just happened. But I want to spend a little time looking at Babyface and With Those We Love Alive, but mainly I might find it more useful to spend time today demonstrating other things. So I'm kind of counting on your experience of these works to tell you what you needed to know about them. I think Babyface is, at least narratively, pretty straightforward in terms of what's going on. I think it's gothic horror, so there are different ways you can interpret things, but the basic problem of it and the atmospheric aspect of it are pretty evident. Like when you play it, that's what it is. The other things, excuse me, With Those We Love Alive has much more, I think, going on in it that's harder to interpret. So I thought I'd try a little bit of that to show you that. But let's start with Babyface, and then let me start with Babyface. And this one definitely does have sound. I don't know what my audio is like right now, but I guess we're about to find out. One of the things I like about both of these works, by the way, is the horror setting, but different kinds of horror. I think they both have a little bit of body horror, Babyface probably more, but With Those We Love Alive is more surreal, cosmic horror, I guess. It's hard to explain, and it's sort of a thing that doesn't really fit into a category very neatly. And I think, by the way, that's a theme within the work, is not fitting into categories. Let's see. I don't hope this isn't super loud. I'm gonna turn my audio down. Yeah, because as some of you mentioned in the thing, in some of the memes, that audio test is quite startling if you have your headphones on and the audio up. So I hope that wasn't too bad. I turned it down kind of, but you probably heard it there. So both of these works are, as I was saying, interesting in terms of their themes, but also interesting in terms of how they use Twine. Both of these are doing things with Twine that are a bit more complex than text with links and choices that you click on, that's kind of a straightforward way of using Twine, which is fun. You can do. There's lots of really interesting works and nice, elegant works that have been made with just essentially the vanilla basic use of Twine. But you can do some pretty fancy stuff too, and both of these works demonstrate different kinds of fancy things you can do, I guess. I like some of the text effects in Babyface as things kind of appear and disappear. I like the use of images and really, but the audio is, I think, really fascinating because it situates you in specific places. The other thing that's specific about the situation here, if you notice, if you look closely, or maybe you don't have to look that closely, but it's definitely set in the year 2020. And you can tell because things like this are casually mentioned. I leave my shoes at the floor and put on the N95, right? So this is the mask. So this tells us that this is a work of 2020, and I think that's resonant in a couple ways. First of all, it just helps us associate it with the present, the story with the present, but also, this is a book about. This is a work where the idea of wearing masks is sort of the issue, and so that's. It's a thing born of this time and of the kinds of anxieties and problems we are facing still in 2021, but that I think we will, going forward, continue to really strongly associate with 2020 as kind of the lost year due to the pandemic. So let's kind of go into it a little bit. A couple of interesting things, a couple subtle things he does here. Sometimes text will change behind where you just read, so sometimes you have to look at it closely to see if something changes up here when you click down here, and some of them are pretty easy to see, some are not. That one, by the way, is easy to miss. I think it originally said he grins, but when you click on it, it now says he grimaces. The text that's replaced there says he grimaces. Photographs, kiddo. You remember real photos, don't you? So I'm not gonna read through this whole thing. I'm just gonna show you a couple pieces of it. I thought this was pretty cool. But notice how this is giving you the same kind of control that you might expect from an interactive fiction, like a text-based interactive fiction, like Photopia. So you can imagine examine photo, typing, instead of typing examine photo, we are presented with a photo and we can click on it, and now we're seeing the bit of exposition that goes with that photo. Yeah, so good point. Elena mentioned telescopic text, and this kind of effect that you see here, it's a... I think it's called replace link. It's a specific macro that's built into SugarCube, I think, if I remember correctly. And I don't believe that it had been. So with Those We Love Alive is a few years older, and I think that particular technique that you just saw me doing there, and that reminds you of telescopic text. I don't know if that was available yet or had been developed yet when Porpentine made With Those We Love Alive, but there are some similar effects in With Those We Love Alive, but I think she's doing it a different way by actually making separate passages that just have progressively longer text. At least that's how it felt when I was reading it. I haven't looked at the source code of either of these, so I don't know. I don't have any insights based on that. But yeah, this is something that's kind of a newer, kind of a special effect almost within Twine. Also the kind of fading in and out of the text. All right, so then we get kicked out. Yeah, and I think it is. So it's primitive. Elena's question about With Those We Love Alive was more primitive in certain ways. I think it just was more, it was older. But I think the work of Porpentine to really push Twine in new directions is really what led people to make make plugins like this reveal text thing. Yeah. I'm trying to get to, there's a couple of pretty interesting, I'm just kind of speed running this right now, but there were a couple of pretty interesting text effects I'm trying to get to. They say he started wearing a mask 30 years ago. So this part's interesting because actually the text changes between the two. Like this text down here changes, and then you click on this, and this is new. So this is kind of an interesting loop, basically, that it builds. I'm trying to get to. There's a really cool part that I thought I wanted to get to. In terms of the text effects. So sorry, I'm just kind of blasting through this. If you have not read this, this speed run does not serve as the replacement for reading it. Yeah, this part's creepy. I like it. So we get music too. So there are diegetic sounds, but there are also actual sound effects and atmospheric music too. What is all this? There it is. So the fly, the fly comes out and leaves. It's interesting. The significance of the flies is sort of mysterious, but I love that little moment where all of a sudden you see a graphic, because you're sort of fully immersed in the text world of this, and then you see a graphical image of a fly buzzing. I don't know if he intended this, but it almost seems like a reference to there's a great video game called Eternal Darkness for the GameCube, and that is one of the things that happens when you play that game Eternal Darkness. Your character in Eternal Darkness is gradually going insane, and so as she does that, different things happen. One of the things that happens is a fly lands or appears to land on your TV screen when you're playing it. So that's definitely reminded me of that moment. Sometimes you have to wait for things to unfold. Yeah, sure. Yeah, flies, that's another one. Yeah, notice the text changing around it. All right, so the step on a crack. I like how this sort of unfolds like a poem. Yeah, I think it's actually going to take me too long to get to, but there's a moment where the text prints upward, like as it unfolds. There's also a point where text starts fading out. Oh yeah, this is great. And yet you continue to hear the sound of the windshield wipers, so that helps, I think, situate this as a flashback. So we're still sitting in the car, our character is still sitting in the car thinking about this scene, and so that windshield wipers sound kind of reminds you that we're still there. Yeah, then somebody taps, like it jars you back to the present, right? As you see uniforms, police officer. I can barely hear the sound effects. I'm not sure what's playing. But that's probably, oh yeah, this part's creepy. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it there. This is another, you can tell this is another surreal kind of dream sequence because the text gets blurry, which I think is a pretty interesting effect. I'm not sure how he did that actually, but I like it. Okay, this is good enough for Babyface. I'll leave that alone. But yeah, if you have questions about it or want to discuss it, we can probably talk about it some on Wednesday. But I wanted to move on a bit. With Those We Live Alive also has music, and I actually forgot that it had music when I was playing it this morning, and I didn't have my headphones in. But this is the this is it, yeah. So I'm going to go into it a little bit, not much, but just the ways, as I mentioned earlier, that Porpentine is doing some of this is a little bit different than what you saw there, although not that much different. So things like this, where you can click to rotate, essentially. That's a different Twine plugin, and I don't remember the name of it, but these are ways that you can accomplish something kind of similar, where the thing is replaced instead of being a link to something else. So there are many layers to this work, and I don't want to spoil it, but I do want to help you understand some of these things. So in fact, just to kind of save time, let me show you this. I shared this link, not there. I shared this link in Discord earlier, but I'll share it again for this section. there are. Okay, so Rock Paper Shotgun is a game blog. As you can see, they've been covering PC gaming since 1873. That's not true. But this is an article or a review article about With Those We Love Alive, and I think it helps explain especially the early parts of it. I say early because there is a way that you kind of get used to things in With Those We Love Alive, and then it shifts and becomes something a little different. And this article doesn't spoil that shift, and I'm not going to either, but this article helps explain that first part and kind of helps situate this a little bit. Let me kind of show you a couple things in case you didn't figure this out. So you just saw me pick my identity basically, and my name. Notice though that it said like you're given a name, but then you find another one, and the one that we're told is our name in this game is actually our actual self. Interestingly and unusually for this, With Those We Love Alive, you can actually go back and remake choices in case you want to see something again, which is helpful because there's a lot of stuff here that's kind of weird. So anyway, so I'm now this. What was my name? Cade Parador, and then I'll get into kind of the main loop. So something dead brown leaves cover inky black lake. Something is rising from the lake. Notice how terse the writing is, like how crisp. Like it's just very brief, but it gives you so many questions, right? The Empress rises from the water, dragging her train of leaves and ichor. Her larval skin floats, or is that ichor? That's one of those words I never say out loud, so I'm not sure what the actual pronunciation is. Her larval skin floats across the lake like the carcass of a pale leviathan. Her aides pick wet plant matter from her skull. I think reading this paragraph, it's easy to, I mean, an obvious question might be, what the heck is going on here? Like, what did I just read? What does this describe? I don't know, but you can picture something in your head, and whatever it is probably different than what I picture, and that's totally fine, because I think it just is meant to be a sense of kind of quotidian horror is the way that I think this article describes it. Just sort of an everyday kind of thing. It's described in a matter-of-fact, everyday kind of way, but what it's describing is horrifying. Her aide says, "Go to your chambers, you will know when we have need of you." She returns to cleaning the skull of the Empress, running her tongue along the effluvial curves. Like, what does that mean? Okay, so there's a kind of, I don't want to say body horror. It's more, I think, cosmic horror, I guess, but it's really its own thing. So anyway, this is the main loop that you'll find yourself in frequently within this, where you're in a palace, and much like in a work of interactive fiction, you can explore the space by moving from room to room. It's just instead of saying, like typing go north, you say balcony. You click on the word balcony, so then you see what's going on from the balcony. And you can leave to go back to where you just were. So you have a pretty coherent sense of space by this mechanism, where you're in here and then you find what is in your immediate vicinity. You're in the palace, so you can go up to your bedroom and you can look in the chest under your bed. Astroglyphs, spiroglyphs, identical to the ones on your body. Precious. And then you can sleep there too. You can go to your workshop where you can look at vials of melter, the power to sculpt metal and stone with your fingers. And you can look at the work table, and you can work on your telescope for a while anyway, and then you can return. And so that's kind of the loop, is sort of exploring this space. The other thing, by the way, I am kind of curious about, I didn't do this, but many people say they do this whenever you read it. At different points in this work, it tells you to write something on your body. I didn't do it this morning, but I'm kind of curious if any of you did that. Obviously, it's a choice you can make, and the picture from Rock Paper Shotgun there kind of shows you that writer's sigils that they made. But I'm kind of curious. It doesn't tell you how to draw the symbols, but it just tells you to draw symbols that have certain meanings, and so it's an opportunity to be creative and interactive in a physical way. So I'm just kind of curious if anyone did that. But anyway, the main thing that you'll find yourself doing is exploring a bit. You can go check things out in the city, but there's really not anything going on most of the time in any specific places. So like the scaffolding here on the Dream, what do they call it? The Dream Distillery, that will change, like as it says, the sign here, and the way that you kind of are led to understand this is like it talks about something happening in a few days, and so what you think is available is like a time mechanic, and so like that's hopefully something that occurred to you. And so the thing you mainly do to kind of pass time in this is sleep, and sometimes things happen while you're asleep, and so you can go back out and see if anything's different in the different places, but if not, you can just keep going back here and going back to sleep. eventually something is going to change, and like a message is pinned to the door. So she needs something nice for the ceremony, something to adorn her. You have work to do. So, okay, we know where to do work. We can go to the workshop and we can get to work. Even if we don't have any idea what's being described here exactly, we can go ahead with it and make something and put these glyphs on it. Sure. Okay. And then give it to the agent, and then see how it goes, right? So that's the main loop, and that's really what you do for the first part, is exploring this bit of the world. Someone else shows up after a while, and that someone else and what you do with that person are really interesting. Like I said earlier, one of the things that I think are similar between these two works is the ways that both writers are using Twine in pretty innovative or different ways. So it's not just text with options that you click on. And this part is fairly straightforward in terms of the architecture of it, but there are some interesting kind of special effects kinds of things in this work as well. And they also are using those not just to be special or to be interesting, but to create a sense in you as the reader. There's one moment later on, and I'm going to go ahead and I'll leave it here, where you and someone else who's just, I think, identified as the friend at that point, is painting your fingernails. And you have to click each finger, you have to click a list of links for each finger that's being painted. And what that does is it forces you to slow down and spend time in that moment, and inevitably you imagine like the sensation or the intimacy of someone painting your fingernails. Like if somebody's sitting there painting your fingernails, that's a very kind of quiet, intimate act, and it involves their body and your body close to each other, and spending time in that moment. So it's almost a sweet little moment in this otherwise really gross kind of game. And there's other things too in this that are really I think moving too. So that's what's brilliant about this work ultimately, is like there are some interesting special effects wise in terms of Twine, but it makes such a compelling and mysterious story that I can't really summarize to you. I can't explain what happens at the end, even if I wouldn't, because I don't want to spoil it, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I really have a kind of top-down view of this in a way that might just explain it. But I think that's okay. I think there's certain themes in it, certain things that resonate, and just the writer here in this article kind of hints at it a little bit, like there is a trans allegory running through it, like transgender allegory. That I think there are different pieces of that you might see here. I don't think the whole thing is a allegory of about transitioning, but I think there are certain elements that relate to that kind of question and that kind of process. So I think that's one of the ways to explain what's going on in it, but I don't think that explains it all, basically. So yeah, interesting work. All right, so I want to show you a couple more things. So I'm going to close this tab so it stops playing music, and talk about Twine. One of the things that I wish that I think is not represented as well as it maybe should be in Scott Reber's book is a bit more about Twine and where it comes from, and I mean that in two senses. The technological sense of where Twine comes from is actually pretty well known and documented and pretty easy to find. So Chris Clemmis created it, as it says here on the webpage, in 2009. But it's an open source tool, so many people have added to it and improved it, and different things. I think there is a major update coming out soon. I saw some hints about it from him on Twitter. But in any case, there's a lot behind Twine just technologically. And lots of ways you can learn about it here and even develop or add code to it if you want to. But as far as its role as a game platform, or as a thing people use to make things like With Those We Love Alive and Babyface and many others by Porpentine, I mean, there's a ton. Actually, I should probably show you this too. Like if you go to ifdb.tads.org and you search for games by Porpentine, she's got quite a few in here, and they are all... Actually, there's probably a better way to get to that, but there are lots and lots of things in here. With Those We Love Alive, you can see is the highest rated one, but there are others that are quite good and similar in some of their aesthetics. I don't know, should I show you a couple more? I mean, if you're looking for things to discover for the Discoveries homework, there's lots of these here. Crystal Warrior Kesha, I think, is quite interesting. not for everyone probably, but there's a certain style that you start to recognize as you explore Porpentine's work here. There's quite a lot of it, so I recommend it. Anyway, let me move back a bit. What I was trying to say is, like, in terms of Twine's influence or Twine's presence within the indie game community, and then not just indie games, but other kinds of writers, Anna Anthropy I think is really significant, because Anna Anthropy on her website, many years ago now, like 2010 or so, which is forever ago or / not that long ago, depending on your perspective, like we were just saying. I don't know exactly when she published her website, but she had a really helpful like Twine tutorial, like here's how you do stuff with Twine. And so whenever students wanted to work with Twine, I would send them that. And that was written for Twine 1, and we're using Twine 2 now, and there's a pretty big difference between Twine 1 and 2. But back then, Twine 1, it was great. And so she had a good set of resources explaining how to use Twine and linking to examples and really helping to kind of create a sense of community around it, because if you were interested, you'd heard of Twine, then you could go to her website, learn how to do it, and see examples of things other people had made. Anna Anthropy, by the way, she is a game designer and educator, and one of her most well-known works is not this one, but not this one either. But well, she created this game called Dysphoria, which is it's a Flash game. So I can show it to you if you want, but it's a Flash game about her experience of gender dysphoria. Pretty interesting game because she uses game mechanics to illustrate certain problems and moments within that process of transitioning. So it's really cool as a game and kind of widely cited. It's like a series of mini games, and several of the mini games don't work, meaning like they actually cannot be played, but you can try to play them, and then the failure to play them illustrates some of the problems she was facing at the time. The challenge though is because it's a Flash game, at least there's one early mini game that I think is just, it doesn't work in the emulator for some reason. Like the emulator that can run Flash games doesn't fully support it, so it doesn't actually work for real. Like it's an actual error, not a design error. But anyway, the other thing that Anna Anthropy did that was really important is this book, Rise of the Video Game Zinesters, where she really advocates for almost a punk or DIY kind of sense around games, and lets Twine be a platform or a way of doing that. So it's a way of resisting the hegemony and the oppressive power of the game industry, and it's a way to do things on your own terms. And that's kind of like the same aesthetics or the same I guess ideology behind zines, publishing your own zines or your own mixtapes or your own your own hacking things, whatever. It's kind of comes. She aligns Twine with that kind of energy, and I think it really it galvanized a movement around Twine that was able to produce that. Then that movement was able to. It was a place for people like Porpentine or like Zoe Quinn to do work that had an audience and could really flourish within that community. And I think, the legacy of that you see with IFDB, but also just like, I think itch.io is full of this kind of stuff too. Some of it is very self-consciously literary or artistic. A lot of it isn't. It's just like stuff for fun. But this idea that like anybody can be a game dev and here's how you do it is great. And I think that is what makes these things, some of these are going to be great, some of these are going to be just okay, but that's amazing. I love that these are here. All right, so let's move on. I wanted to demo a few things that would be kind of challenging to demo on your own, but I'll give you some possible ways to do it. This is something else, but let me show you one of the works that's mentioned in the chapter, towards the end of chapter 4, Rubber talks about games as platforms or literary platforms, and there is a artist and writer working in that field named Jason Nelson, whose work is pretty interesting. It's most of it is Flash based, and so in order to run it, let me show you what I'm doing here. I'm looking at oldwebdot.today, and this is a website that lets you emulate old web browsers, and that includes some of these web browsers have versions of Flash or Java installed, so you can really go back in time. This is much more of a time machine than the Wayback Machine. So the Wayback Machine just like it points you to an older web page, but you're still looking at that older web page with your modern browser. This gives you Internet Explorer 6 and lets you pretend like you're using a Windows 2000 computer with Internet Explorer 6 and Flash version 9. And it tries to show you what that is, and it literally is running that. it's running all that inside of JavaScript inside of your web browser. So I have found that even on my kind of souped up computer here, it doesn't run very well, but it's interesting, and it's better than nothing. Maybe it's better than nothing. But what does also kind of work is just the Ruffle emulator here. So Ruffle is I don't know much about who's making Ruffle, but it's something that is in development that's trying to give us a way to experience Flash, even though Flash doesn't work anymore. So this works for many of these games that are on this website, but not all of them. And I'm going to show you game, and again game. It does work it will kind of work, but there's one really significant part that's missing. In fact, you can actually see it right here, this little pop-up of a video clip. The video clips don't work, but other things do. So I'm going to send you this link once I get the right link here. For some reason, this is actually just a bug or an error, or maybe it's on purpose. I don't know, but it's something on Jason's website. So if you click on this link from his website, it actually gives you the wrong URL, but it's just mistyped, I think, with an extra L. So this is here, and I'm going to send you this link here in Discord in case you want to look at it on your own. This is a game called Game, and again Game, and this was published in the late aughts, I guess. And so Jason Nelson is he's a scholar and a digital poet, but this work was published in that kind of community, but also on all of those like free Flash websites that were like Flash game websites that were a big deal back then, like Newgrounds, which I had up just a minute ago, and like, there's a ton of other ones. But he put this game into those kinds of platforms, and people were, I think, a little surprised and confused by it. So let me show you how to play this. It's missing a pretty significant part of it, but you can at least get the basic idea. Right, so you can move left and right. You can spacebar to click to jump. The sound is kind of glitchy and aggressive. The text here is interesting, but it's almost like you don't necessarily need to read it. You could. Below this icy spring are animals. This senatorial spring as parole, as population, not human in the forensic way. Things for runes, saying you are between 90% of victims and more than half dissipate. There are no other possible. And then the word is moving too fast to see. So you could read it all. Jump and leap, not alive. But I think for many of these levels, especially the next couple, the text is almost there as like texture. A big lie on or within the overhead, please let the nominee die drinking and heavily attending. This bit here where it says click here, load video proof, no longer, that doesn't work within the emulator, and I'm not sure why. This one has to do with religion. The Book of Jelly 3444, and up was the official direction of heaven, and lions were there eating cake with bunnies. The Book of Gregory 145, and forth came the numbers of all super powerful and teaching hidden hours to batteryless clocks. The Book of Swordfishes 112 services followed by a lunch of small dishes created from the strongest mayonnaise and cheesiest noodles, the bakiest of beans and soupiest of hopes. Such followers, such warm followers. The Book of Prager's 999, the laid in the dust and tires, all plantations, rubbers for the tip to catch the clouds, the dark starting gun. So, I mean, I would say the text is kind of optional. Welcome 4chan rulers, spread this game forever. But it's part of it. One thing that I think isn't clear necessarily is this game looks messy and glitchy and chaotic. And sounds messy and glitchy and chaotic, but this is all designed. Like these are things that Jason Nelson did on purpose. So I think some people, even students, have seen this kind of work and wanted to dismiss it as just being like chaos or surreal drug-fueled nonsense. But it's not. I mean, it's really just this is his art that he wanted to create, and it takes a lot of effort to create this kind of art. Do you want me to switch off of it? I'll switch off. It is intense. Okay. If it's hurting your head, I will stop. But it has a kind of what I think of as kind of a maximalist aesthetic, meaning it's just like throwing a ton at you that your senses can just sort of barely take in. So yeah, I'll turn it off for now. But this game is, yeah, it's a lot. That's another way to put it. This is a series of games, in fact, that like he's done several, and I think there's 3 that really hang together thematically and aesthetically. This is game, and again game, and then a sequel to that one, I think, is I Made This, You Play This, We Are Enemies. And I can turn the audio down, that might help, but or maybe not. But I'll just show you this briefly. The idea with this one is that instead of it being like sketchy notebook page kind of things as the background, this uses websites as the background. Yeah, I've got the audio basically off, but this audio is much more jarring. But here we're playing with Google as kind of the background, and then it does different levels of different interfaces. The other one that I think of as really part of this series is evidence of everything exploding, and these are not in any kind of order, so I'm not sure where it is. Oh, here it is. Yeah, evidence of everything exploding. And this one uses kind of like historical documents as the play field of different levels. And the gameplay for this one actually is a bit more coherent as gameplay. Like you have to actually solve a maze a little bit. The other one that's similar to these, but I think maybe its own thing, is called Alarmingly. These are not lovesick zombies. And it's out in its own world too, but it's sort of a top-down shooter. And pretty intense visually, but actually playable as a game. But then, like you can see a little bit here, these little videos of Jason lecturing pop out, and his lectures are not. I mean, they're part of the art. Like they're not like informative lectures. They're part of the like the poetry of it. So he's lecturing about the history of pencils at one point. Anyway, so this is Jason Nelson's work, and yeah, it's a style, like it's a thing, and I like it a lot, and I like Jason a lot. So that was Jason Nelson. There's a lot more to Jason Nelson. I really recommend exploring that website, secrettechnology.com. Some of the works are actually HTML5, so you can play them, or they have video versions. But if you want to look at them in an emulator, ruffle.rs, or just using oldwebdot.today is the best way to do that. Okay, so with the last few minutes, I think what I will do is I also, for the other games that I listed for today, Heaven's Vault, Life is Strange, Episode 1, and Dr. Langeskov, I did not get a chance to play Heaven's Vault yet myself, but I have started playing Life is Strange, and I thought I would show it to you as, just for a few minutes, because it's an example of a AAA game title that is very much narrative based and very much doing a lot of the same things we've been seeing in our interactive fiction examples, things like Photopia and Zork and Shade and all that, but delivered in a full 3D graphic mode instead of text. So I'm going to switch my scene over here, and I think this will work. And I have not actually finished episode 1 yet, so I'm going to kind of jump in where I am, and you'll see. But I wanted to show you a few of the mechanics, and in order to help you see how it works and how it uses game stuff to do that. Let me see, I need the audio. I need to turn the audio back up. I had it turned down because I didn't want you all to be blasted by Jason Nelson's stuff, but this is turning it back on. Oh, AAA, Bobby mentioned, AAA just means like the opposite of indie. And even it's probably a subjective term, but AAA just means like a major game studio, like something you could buy on a PlayStation. I mean, in general, but like that said, there are a fair amount of indie games, and this, I mean, it doesn't really matter what things are. This is definitely, it has an indie game vibe to it, so maybe this could be considered indie. But yeah, blockbuster films, that's a good analogy. Versus indie films. So I hope the audio is not too loud on this, but I wanted to show you how it does some of the same things. So this is fairly far along in episode 1, which as I said, I haven't finished yet, so I don't know what's happening next, but it gives you an opportunity to explore spaces and have dialogue with other characters, and the choices you make, the things that you choose to look at,
it's cool. At least we can chill out.
Can change the options or the possibilities later on.
My step-fearer makes sure of that. Come in and close the door. Put on some music while I medicate.
Okay, so this is, I'm playing as Max, and that's Chloe on the bed there. Chloe and Max have just been reunited after being apart for many years. And yeah, and so we're just kind of getting to know Chloe again after being, they were best friends, and then they haven't spoken for 5 years. And we're going to learn more about that intervening period, I think, as we play. But as you can see, I can look around, I can do different things. And if you were playing a text-based game, you might be like, examine box, but now I have to just click look, and then look at box, and then I get a little exposition about the box. So I can search it too. And so, formally speaking, in terms of what we're doing, it's pretty similar to what we would be doing in a text-based thing. But it's all graphic, so we can look at it in this way as we get to do it.
I'm not into them. Too pretentious.
So one of the major things in this game, the major mechanics that's unique to it, is the time manipulation. So it's hard to explain all the things that have happened before this scene, but basically Max has discovered that she has the ability to rewind time. So if she does something that she regrets, or if you do something, you make a choice for her that she change it, that you don't think is going to give you the best outcome, or you can undo it. So let me show you an example here. So if you search this box, Max searches this box, it spills some stuff. Dude, you broke my glass snow dome. And so you see the butterfly up there. This action will have consequences. So if that's the case, like, I can proceed with the game, but there is something that will be different later on because of what just happened there. And it might be that she no longer has a snow globe, or it might be that she's kind of mad at Max right now. And so that's going to make it harder for certain conversation options to appear. So if you want to rewind that, the right click, the button, I can right click on my mouse to take me back to before that happened. And now I can just not do that. And now I proceed as though that has not happened, because it hasn't happened yet. So that's a pretty useful way to understand different options, and especially when you get into different conversation trees. Like, you can sometimes start talking to somebody and you want to find out about something, but you end up offending them or somehow ending the conversation prematurely. And so you can rewind in the conversation and try to find a different way to ask them things and get the information that you're in after. So there is a little bit of puzzling in this, light puzzle solving. Like right now, Chloe wants me to turn on the radio.
It won't play without any power.
I have to figure out how to turn on the radio. But what's really happening is, I mean, that's the puzzle, but the story part here is that I'm exploring Chloe's room and learning a bit more about Chloe, and at the same time, Chloe's kind of watching, so there are certain things that if I do them in here, she's going to react to it. So I can check out her computer.
She looks super happy. She looks super sad. She looks super stoned.
And I can go have a conversation with Chloe, even though I haven't turned on the music yet.
So tell me, what does Max Caulfield do for fun now that she's a grown-up?
Not much. You know me. I like to observe the world more than participate.
I can't say I know you anymore. Maybe you love to go clubbing every night.
Can you see me at a rave?
I'd dose those candy-flipping morons and watch them twitch into a DJ dance death rattle. Take a photo of that.
So as we're getting to know Chloe here, Chloe is pretty angry for reasons that we may learn about. Also, I have a text message. Oh, I have a message from Victoria. By the way, thanks, but we're not friends. Victoria has been bullying Max, and so I chose a set of options that led me to kind of help Max and Victoria get along a little bit, and so like help Victoria with a problem. And so now they're on speaking terms at least, but not necessarily not friends, as Victoria just clarified. As you play this game, what you see is that it actually develops like a text-based story. Like, you can read it in journal form, basically, to recall the different decisions you made. I did notice, though, a couple of idiosyncrasies with this. One is that, like, this describes a conversation with Dana, and explains different motivations for things that Max was thinking as she tried different things in Dana's room, but that didn't occur to me. And it also, so there is still some disconnect between like what the character is supposed to be thinking and doing and what I as the player am thinking and doing. And that's, maybe there's no way around that. But this I thought was pretty different, which is like in Dana's room, I as Max looked around a little bit and saw several hints that Dana is pregnant, like a positive pregnancy test was pretty much a giveaway, but it was there on the floor, and then there was like a doctor's note and some other stuff. So I realized that Dana is pregnant, but down here it says that Dana admitted she was pregnant. But in my playthrough, Dana did not say that out loud, but I knew it after spending some time in that room. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. But I think overall this is a pretty nice looking game, just visually, and it demonstrates what I was talking about in terms of interactive fiction, but in the same kinds of things, but being done entirely in a graphical context as opposed to a text-only context. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. There's lots more games like this, and I was going to show you a couple more, but I'm out of time, obviously, so I will wrap this up. But if you're interested in this kind of thing, there are certainly other examples, and certainly things could be added for the discoveries option in Discord if you come across something. And one of the things I want you to think about, like we're in the third gen of electronic literature right now, and one of the things about the third gen that I hope I made clear in talking about it is that the third gen doesn't necessarily need the second gen. In other words, a lot of people are doing electronic literature or things that we can recognize as electronic literature without calling it that. And yeah, so Eleanor, that's another complicated narrative-based game that tries to be a kind of like a literary work, as DJ just mentioned. One thing that I hope you can do is think about electronic literature and some of the intellectual toolkit like we get from Marie Law Ryan and Leo Flores, and then use that toolkit to observe things in your just day-to-day media consumption, your media experience. And I think you will find quite a lot of things have these characteristics, but aren't coming to you from me or from like an explicitly labeled electronic literary framework. So keep an eye out for those things, and that's what I would love to see in the Discord channel. Quite a few other games I thought of showing for you all, but I don't have time. Things like Gone Home, What Remains of Edith Finch, Kentucky Route Zero. These are good games and pretty interesting ones, which if you are interested in these kinds of things, I'm teaching my games and culture class in the fall, and some of you I think are in that, but it's a class in a lot of demand, and it's very full, so I'm not like advertising it to try to get more students in it. But if you have time for it on your schedule, or if you see an opening, you're definitely, I encourage you to check it out if you're interested in video games. All right, cool. So I'm going to wrap it up because I'm a little bit over time. But thanks for watching, everyone, and hope you all have a good afternoon. I will see the odd cohort, the odd face-to-face cohort in person on Wednesday, and everyone else will be on Zoom. Main purpose for Wednesday is to prepare for the quiz, but that will include your reading of the rest of Chapter 4, so make sure you read the rest of Chapter 4. Okay, so that's all for now. Have a good day, everyone. I'll switch over to the bird cam for a few minutes. Oop, that's not the bird cam. Just in case something comes back. I saw a Junko earlier today, so I guess they didn't migrate. At least that one didn't. All right. I guess I should, I should I have a more gradual transition. I always forget to use it, though. Let me do it like this. Oh, no, not like that. I'm just playing around in OBS. So, bye, everyone.